It's less about persuasion, it's more about being able to navigate politics and engineer a business case and make sure the customer is really focused on value and risk mitigation as part of them making their decision.
Welcome back, Tony Hughes.
Hey John, good to be with you again.
Hey, I wanted to raise a subject and get your opinion on what are the risks associated with enterprise sales. And you and I mainly talk B2B and complex B2B type selling.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget about some of the risks. And I know one of the issues I come across all the time is the biggest competitor is no decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the risks we need to be cognizant of and how do we overcome them?
Well, let's maybe talk about this in the context of someone moving up in their sales career from sort of small to medium business, corporate selling into large enterprise selling.
Okay.
So there are some nuances that introduce huge levels of risk in a deal. So the first thing to me is there's more people, right? So you'll get 7 groups of people, maybe even more than that, all that have a voice and a say in the decision. And organisations aren't going to progress unless they feel like they've got everybody on board. And often with a business case, it's cross-funded by different parts of the organisation. So there's a lot of risk around organisational complexity, relationships and politics. That's really the first thing.
I absolutely agree. How many times have I lost because I lost in the world of politics?
Yeah, and when we look at this thing of people going through a process and then doing nothing, it's often because they couldn't get the business case over the line or they couldn't get all the people across the line. So business case
this issue of you might have a brilliant, compelling value proposition and a compelling event and everything, but it still doesn't get across the line because inside a big business, there's all sorts of projects that people are trying to get up and you're competing internally against other projects and sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, exactly. So the first risk is people and political risk and gathering the right level of consensus. Mm-hmm. The next thing is you need to build a really compelling business case because in the absence of a compelling event, you need a compelling business case.
Well, you need both.
Yeah, it's true.
If at all possible.
Yeah, and most of us that are selling are trying to help the client change state, change the way they currently do things. So you absolutely need a really strong business case. So there's a lot of risk around whether you can actually build that. Third level of risk that speaks to both of these two previous things is getting stuck at the wrong level in an organisation. If you enter at the mid levels, people start to want to gather information but then quickly become blockers. So as you try to build the business case and try to gather consensus for a decision, they'll end up blocking you. So it's really important to manage that risk by entering at a senior level and getting sponsored to other people, but always maintaining access.
And my experience is the senior people are much more open to change. They're always looking to have their thinking disrupted. Yeah. They recognise that if they don't continually disrupt their thinking, they're putting their whole corporation at risk.
Yeah, definitely.
So, calling high with those key messages, absolutely critical.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to talk the language of the leader, which is their outcomes, managing their risks, and underpin it with dollars, percentages, and key result areas.
And that requires some pretty solid domain expertise in the customer domain.
You've got to do your research. You've got to know your installed base reference customers really well. The next thing I'd love to talk about is that I think there's a lot of risk in the sale around a desperate competitor once you become the preferred. Yep. So in large enterprise selling, they'll shortlist down to 2 or 3 different players. And here's my tip on all of this. Once you find out that you're the preferred, have a conversation with the customer about what their process is now and recommend to them that they don't advise the other parties that they've lost. Say, look, we've got a negotiated contract now. The thing we see other clients do is they keep those other people on the hook in case for whatever reason we're unable to finalise a contract.
Good advice, yeah.
Right, and that's in the interest of the client. But what we don't want is the customer telling the others they've lost and then the others go all desperate and start trying to give things away or go and get access to really senior people. So it's really important that we manage the risk of competitors doing crazy things at the 11th hour if they figure out they've lost the deal.
Good point.
Yeah. So they're probably really the sort of key things in managing the risk inside enterprise selling. So the people, the politics, gathering consensus, having a strong business case, and making sure that you manage desperate competition toward the end. And then you need to manage other risk around your people having access to theirs. Brief people really well, make sure you keep them on message.
bottom line is you need to understand where all the risks are likely to be and actually run a risk mitigation plan. It's standard project management.
Yeah, definitely. You need a way of managing risk in the deal. Salesperson needs to be a good project manager in that sense when they move into enterprise selling. So it's less about persuasion, it's more about being able to navigate politics and engineer a business case and make sure the customer is really focused on value and risk mitigation as part of them making their decision.
I think that's great advice, and I really thank you for it, Tony, and thank you for all the time you give out to the world of sales out there. You bring a lot of value.
Thanks, John.